Drive.
Hey, let's drive. And you guys know what? We thought we were going to have to wait until April in the D to be able to drive down that legendary Woodward Avenue and experience a month where all 4 sports teams are playing and they all have hope at the same time. That represents October. And the Detroit Pistons, they get started tonight, their season against the Indiana Pacers. And there's some players over there that just continue to mouth off, man. Tyrese Halliburton probably should have been a Piston. Benedict Mathurin wanted to be a Piston. And these guys have mouthed off, and I just want the Pistons to go out there and handle their business. Not because those guys are mouthing off, but because what Weezy D313 is saying, Pistons, he's saying Pistons are the better team. It should be easy. I thought he was saying Pistons are a better team, which I do believe. But the better team, that is something that I want to see this squad obviously prove to us tonight.
Yes, and I think that's a little bit aggressive, but I think, but to be fair, I think we all see the Pistons being a greatly improved team, so it's not outside the realm of possibility that the Pistons finish with a record in the neighborhood of the Pacers, maybe even a little bit better. I'm not willing to go there just yet, but how about you start off by kicking their ass in Little Caesars Arena? How about that?
Let's go!
There we go.
Boy, I'm getting fired up, man. I'm getting fired up. And I'm supposed to cover this thing objectively. Sorry. You know what? Let's bring on somebody who is probably a little bit more professional at this objectivity thing. Mr. Omari Sankofa, the Detroit Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press Pistons beat writer. What up, though, Omari, man? It's opening day, man. It's like a family reunion on these days.
Yeah, it's opening day. This is what we wait for all year, right? Yeah, it'll be a fun one. I'm ready for it.
Definitely. First, thank you for just taking the time and opportunity. I know it's a busy day. I know how these days go. I see you with the hair. I know you got the appointment today, too, to get right for opening night.
Oh, yeah.
So I just want to make sure that I say thank you for giving us your time. And definitely plug where people can find you, Free Press. And obviously, my guy, Bryce Simon, Motor City Hoops, and the podcast you guys do as well. Just want to give you the opportunity to plug that.
Yeah, no doubt. Everybody can find my work over at the Detroit Free Press, which is freep.com. And then we also have the Pistons Post, which we record once a week. My co-host is Bryce Simon over at Motor City Hoops on Twitter. And we record live. So, if you're a fan of Woodward, feel free to join us on our live recordings. And we like to have fun.
Hey, definitely. And one thing I can tell you is the guests that we like to have on this show, especially ones in my Pistons world, they're even better people than the professionals that they show. So that is who Omari Sankofa is. And you know what, 7 years on the beat now for you?
This is, it's 7 years covering the NBA, and this is year 5 on the Pistons, I believe.
Oh, wow. And you are the senior most writer and reporter in that room for us on the beat. So thank you for joining us today. And I just got to ask you, there's this level of optimism surrounding the Detroit Pistons right now, and it has to do with what they've seen Trajan Langdon and JB Bickerstaff do in such a short amount of time at getting kind of the identity of this team. You can already see it moving in a different direction, at least from my purview. I just wanted to be able to get your takeaways already on the differences in between the vibes that you felt last year at this point, training camp, heading into season opener underneath a different and a new coaching staff, and this season as well.
You're older. Cade Cunningham, obviously, a year older. So there are some things that are leading to optimism, and with that, just a belief that this team is good enough to move the needle forward. Obviously, last year you had struggles, but I think the confidence level's a bit higher this year, so we'll see how it all manifests, but the vibes through training camp and preseason have been pretty good so far.
Bro, music in the gym, bro. Me and Rob was cracking up at that because even the fans picked up on it too, like, yo, the vibes are just different. What up, though, Flannel?
Yes, how much of a difference do you think just having JB Bickerstaff here instead of Monty Williams will make for this team?
I think it helps. I think anytime you have a season like last year and you bring a new voice in, that's always going to lend itself to just a different energy and maybe feeling less beholden to what's happened in the past, which was the goal for ownership, was just to completely cut ties with whatever kind of poisoned the well last season, which was likely a combination of different things. But JB's come in, and I think his energy has been infectious for the group. I think he's a coach who has done it at this level a couple times, where he was in Memphis and he had Jaren Jackson Jr. and some younger guys, and they still play pretty well defensively. And we all know what he did in Cleveland, culminating with the second round exit a few months ago. So you have some, like you have a head coach who is energetic, who knows what it takes to get young teams to that next stage. And, it seems like just through the first month, that's been the case so far. They defended well during preseason, and they've all been complimentary of his scheme and the way he's come in and really energized the room.
You love to hear that.
Definitely.
And I know most of Pistons media and Pistons fans are very pro Cade Cunningham, but I think on our show we're even more pro Cade than even most. I consider myself and my co-host Kool-Aid a bit Cade slappies, but you know what? It's fine. But my question to you is this an all-star season loading for Cade Cunningham?
I think his numbers will be in that category. You look at his last 46 games last year after he shook off the rust from shin surgery, and he was putting up about 23 points, 7 assists, low turnovers, good efficiency across the board. And now you couple that with a better roster and him being a year older, a year more experienced. And, I think the idea is that would lend itself to him having at least as good of a season, if not better. What's interesting with Cade, I actually went back just to some of my old stories. He missed training camp and preseason as a rookie due to an ankle sprain. Of course, his sophomore season, he was dealing with the shin injury. So he did play in training camp and preseason, but he was shut down 12 games in, and then he had surgery that December. And then this time last year, he was rehabbing from that surgery. So this is like the first time in his career that he's had a full training camp, a full preseason, and he's been fully healthy the whole time, which those three things, I talked to him about it the other day, and he was just talking about feeling maybe a bit more ready, a bit more prepared at this point than he has in the past, just because of the injuries. So we'll see what that means, but he has a momentum, I think, right now that he hasn't had at this time of the year just because of his health situation.
Yeah, and I want to be able to make sure that we paint the picture, definitely, because we cover the team in certain capacities, but with Omari Sankofa, you in your capacity with the Free Press, you get the opportunity to actually have even more and deeper one-on-ones with Cade Cunningham, to be able to talk to him, kind of get updates on things of that nature. And so when you do speak on Cade Cunningham, I just want the audience to understand, like, you're able to have these types of conversations with them, and it's able to provide us a even more insight look at what might be going on with the Detroit Pistons star.
Oh, absolutely. He's a guy, like, since he came in, he comes in with high expectations, and we've all seen what he could do in stints, but it's just putting together the full 82 games with preseason and training camp that hasn't quite happened for him yet. But, again, like, we know what he could do. Last season, his numbers really weren't that different from Paolo Banchero. And, I think when it comes to making All-Star or anything else, team record's always going to be a factor. So for Cade, he would need the Pistons to probably win at least twice as many games as they did last year for that to actually be a discussion. But numbers wise, he was there last year. No reason to think he won't be there this year. And a lot of it just comes down to not just him, but what the team can do around him too.
What's up, Omari? Appreciate you being on the show. And I wanted to ask you, what is the biggest area of improvement this Pistons team needs to make in order to reach 30-plus wins? Because there's a lot of excitement around this team right now. A lot of people are getting back on the bandwagon that this team could, push for 30 wins, maybe even a play-in. But the biggest areas of need, coming from last year, a lot of people would say coaching. A lot of people would say shooting. A lot of people would say defense. Some would even say the individual play of players like Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren. But what is the biggest area of improvement the Pistons need to make in order to reach 30-plus wins this year?
The last 4 or 5 seasons, and you're just not going to win that many games being one of the NBA's worst defenses. You got to have like a top 3-4 offense to make up for that, and they haven't had that either. But I think they probably have a quicker path to being average on defense, just because we saw during preseason that they had a top 5 defensive rating, and it's preseason, like that doesn't always carry into the regular season. But there was I think an organization and like that we haven't seen in past seasons, and they have not had that in past seasons. So we will see, but I think defensively, if they could at least move toward average, that would go a very long way, because they have players who can put the ball in the hoop. I don't think that'll be an issue. You have to be able to defend, at least at an average level, I think, for this thing to really move forward.
Yes, and speaking of things that we hope improve for the Pistons and we think will improve, when you look at Detroit sports right now, when you look at the teams that are winning, one of the hallmarks is great assistant coaches. With the Lions, you see it with Ben Johnson. With the Tigers, you see it from pitching coach Chris Fetter. What type of impact can Fred Vinson have on some of these young shooters, and who do you think will benefit most from his tutelage? Because you've seen him work with guys like Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, even guys like Najee Marshall and Herb Jones. Who are a couple of guys from the Pistons who will benefit from Fred Vinson?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing he brings is just that, him being a shooting guru. You mentioned the players he worked with in New Orleans and Trajan Langdon when he first got in here. One of the first things he did was go and pry Fred Vinson out of New Orleans, because
what a
Trajan
move, man.
Yeah, I mean, he understands that you have to be able to shoot the ball in today's NBA. And they hired Fred Vinson before they had like a head coach. Like, he was an assistant coach for the team that didn't have a head coach, which speaks to how important it was for Trajan to bring him in. But I mean, again, like, we saw Jaden Ivey shoot the ball better during preseason. If that continues, then that's a huge boon, because he's been about 33-34% for his career. So you bump that up a couple percentage points, and that makes a pretty big difference. You look at a guy like Asar Thompson, who shot 18% from three. He's been working with Vinson last summer, and I mean, if he could become any type of credible threat at all, then that would be a huge turnaround and open things up for him. And you could go up and down the roster. None of the young guys on this team, except probably Sasser, have come out of the gate shooting the ball, at least at an average level. And he could help with all of those things, right? He has a pretty proven track record. And that's something that you may not see the impact this season. It may take a year or two, but he's been working with these guys, and the hope is that everybody he's working with can become at least average in time.
Yeah, and just one more question. Got to ask you, before the game and the ball tips off, what is your season prediction right now for these Detroit Pistons?
I think they could be, if they have good health, and I think along that you have to compete for 82 games. You can't start winding guys down after the trade deadline for this to happen. But they could be in the 30-win range. I think you look at the East, and you have teams like Brooklyn, you have teams like Washington, who very clearly are going into next season with the expectation that they will lose, and we have a pretty good draft next summer that teams hope will reward them for that losing. So you have a few teams in the East that I think are going to take a step back out of design. The Pistons have a lot to prove with a new front office, new head coach, and the players obviously coming off of last season want to show that this is not them. So if a full 82-game season, if they're competing till the end, I think that they could get to 30 wins.
Hey, let's rock, man. That's about, I think, where I was at as well. I've kind of inched that a little bit up since I've seen them playing in preseason. We don't victory lap too much. Flannel Sam is always making sure I don't take too many of those preseason victory laps. But to see some of the improvements, they looked a little bit more connected on defense. I still do believe that will be their biggest question mark to start this season off, is their defense. I want to see them, at least Trajan Langdon from a personnel standpoint, try and get a little bit taller, probably some people with some better measurables to be able to play in that front court as well, to give them a better opportunity to play in that backboard, protect the rim and protect the paint, and reduce the amount of fouls. That's one thing I know B. Stu, he's going to try. But because of the size disadvantage, sometimes he's going to be called for the foul. And so, but with where they're positioned right now, I believe they did so much to bring themselves to a position to show vast improvement. I know a lot of people say doubling your win total is crazy, but I don't believe that they were necessarily a 14-win team last year. And I believe when you look at going into this season, they've done a lot to fill a lot of the different needs. They had a lot of them. So that's why we can still sit here and say, well, they still got to look at the defense, but at least they got the shooting right. At least they got a coach in here that's developing a culture that caters towards making sure these young guys not just develop, but also play the right way as well. Not just going out there and just kind of doing what you get to do. So it's going to be a fun night tonight. I'm hoping that we see all of you all down there at LCA tonight. It's going to be jumping. If there's one thing I know, the home openers for the Pistons, they go crazy. So definitely be there. Thank you for your time, Omari. Any last words, brother?
No, hey, no, just follow my work over at the Free Press Pistons Post, and it'll be good to see you tonight.
But hey, have a good day and be blessed. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hey, and you know what? We got a lot more on the way. Opening night is tonight, 7 o'clock against the Indiana Pacers. What I love about this is not just that it was displaying opening night, but also they were beating the piss out of the Bucks as well. So that's lovely. That's lovely. Just keep the mojo going, because you know what I know? As much as people want to try sometimes and scoff at the NBA or the Pistons, let them win 2 or 3 games at the beginning of the season and tell me they're not going to be in these chats, just like with the Tigers. When we push back against y'all, then when the Tigers run started, all of a sudden, the chat, the numbers. So that's what we're here for, man. It's not wishy-washy. It's not fair weather. It's full force. That's what we're doing. So much so that we even taking this thing professional. We could just be content creators. Mm-hmm. We taking this thing professional, just like you're about to do with the Red Wings.
Hey, and the reality of the situation is, whenever these Detroit sports teams are good, even when they're not, but especially when they're good, there will be a love affair with all of the teams, regardless who they are. And the Pistons, I'm not saying it's all going to come to fruition this year, but like you said, even if they win tonight, how do you think that atmosphere is going to be? It's going to be electric.
It's going to be electric. It's going to be electric, and I can't wait. There's going to be some dignitaries in the building. Hey, let's get into this next segment. I know we got Rod on, and DJ High Def Stuff. He's going to be in studio. That's going to be an interesting one, because this is one of those guys that if you're a Pistons fan and just kind of in basketball world, you see him on the concourse, you see him at some of the charity events and such. But his life outside of that too, it's wild, man. He had a crazy experience. He was one of the official DJs at NBA All-Star Weekend too.
Ooh, if that ain't, that is some pedigree right there.
Steph.
That is some pedigree right there. But you know what else has some pedigree amongst some, particularly in this room? KG and JB Smoove, Dispo, of course.
Hey.